It's brilliant to see so many of you with us today. And just before we get started, I'm just going to quickly introduce myself. So I'm Amy Arkwright. I'm one of the early careers managers and I'm based in our Leeds office. I've been with Owen Mitchell now for nearly 3 years, but I've been in and around early careers for the last 10. So I'm going to be hosting the session today, but I am joined by a fantastic group of colleagues across our business who are going to focus on their different locations. So I'm hoping that you've deduced from the title of the webinar that today's session is going to focus on our regional offices outside of London and to tell you all about those opportunities that we've got available there. So hopefully you may already know that our training contract applications are open. We opened at the beginning of October and we will close on the 1st of December. So there is plenty of time to listen to what we tell you today and also to do your research and hopefully then be convinced of making an application to us. So in terms of the opportunities that we've got available, we are looking for around 50 training contract opportunities. And just for relevance today, so around 12 of them are based in our London office, but if you can do the maths there, you'll see that the majority of the other opportunities are based across our other amazing offices. And just to give you a sense of the scale in terms of our applications and what we typically see in terms of those applications coming through, in terms of that first stage, that online assessment, for London, we generally see around 1,500 applications. However, that tends to rise year on year. For Manchester, we're at around 600 applications. For Leeds, we've got about 310 applications. For Birmingham, Bristol and Sheffield, that's around 200 each. Cambridge and Newcastle, we are around 100, and for Chichester, Reading, Gatwick and Southampton, we tend to average around 50 applications. So if you are considering outside of our London office, hopefully you can see from those numbers that there is some real opportunity. That said, of course, the decision as to where you want to base yourself should be genuinely where you see yourself thriving. And hopefully, when you listen to our speakers today, you'll hear their stories and see that they've just done that in their respective locations. So I'm going to come on to talk about our locations, but I'm just going to quickly run you through our panel today. So in terms of Birmingham, we are joined by Amy Greenhill. In Brighton, we've got Martha Kent. In Bristol, we've got Hannah Davies. In Cambridge, we've got Eleanor Mallet. For Chichester and Reading, we've got Laura Jackson. In Leeds, we've got Henry Thompson. In Newcastle, Alicia Gibson. For Sheffield, we've got Katie Parker, and then last but not least, we've got Rachel Grieg in Southampton. So each of them are going to share insights around their own office and tell you why it is a great place to start your legal career. So we do have some time scheduled in for a Q&A at the end of the session. However, just want to point out that if you have got any questions as we go through, the best place to put them is in the Q&A function, which you should see on the top of the screen, and we will check that, reply to your question, or if not, I will pick it up later on in the Q&A. So let's move on now just to have a look at all our different offices where we have lots of opportunities. So as you can see from the slide there, we have got quite a few. In terms of trainee recruitment, we currently recruit trainees into 12 of our offices, which really does give you a wide range of options depending upon where you would like to build your career. Really exciting for this year in our recruitment round is that we have now added vacancies in Brighton, Cardiff, Liverpool and Nottingham, and that's a really big step forward for us, and it means that we're expanding our trainee coverage across all our fantastic regional offices. So hopefully today you will hear that you'll hear all those brilliant opportunities to explore working in all those different parts of the country, and we are really proud as an early careers team, but also as a firm, to be able to offer such a broad footprint. So, I'm just going to take us through now in terms of the types of work that you tend to find in the different offices, so you can get an idea of what it is we're offering. So, when you make an application for a training contract with us, we will ask you to think really carefully about the work that you want to train in and what you want to get involved in. And this is because whilst you're with us as a trainee, we want to give you a really meaningful experience, and we want to give you the experience that will complement where you eventually want to qualify, so that by the time you move into that newly qualified role, you'll have a really solid foundation that supports your success in the team that you qualify into. So, as part of the application, you will need to select the stream that you want to train in, and we actually offer two different streams. The first, and what you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, is our legal services for businesses, and we will refer to that in the presentation as LSB. And then on the right-hand side, we've got our legal services for individuals, and again, we refer to that as LSI. So each stream, as you can see on the slide there, includes a number of different departments, and there's some real broad different teams within those two streams. So for businesses, you can see that we've got 13 teams that sit across that area. And on the right, again, you can see the LSI teams, which include court of protection, public law, medical negligence, and then within personal injury, we've also got serious injury and asbestos and occupational disease. Last but not least, we've got private client, including wills, trusts, and estate disputes, private client advisory, family, and international high net worth. So hopefully, what you can take from that slide, you can see that we've got lots of different services, and this setup really allows us to provide a really streamlined and also a collaborative approach for our clients, and they also help you as trainees build that expertise in a really structured and supported way. So I'm going to move on now to our team of fee earners. We're going to talk about the different offices and why they chose their location to build their career. So I'm going to come to Birmingham first, and I'm going to come to Amy Greenhill.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy, and I'm a newly qualified solicitor in the employment team in Birmingham. And today I'm going to be talking to you about the benefits of choosing to train in Birmingham and my journey to becoming a qualified solicitor. Birmingham is famous for many things: Peaky Blinders, Black Sabbath, having more canals than Venice, and the biggest Primark in Europe. And it's also home to Erwin Mitchell's Birmingham office in the Colmore building, which you can see there on the side. I've always lived and worked in Birmingham and the West Midlands. However, when I was applying for training contracts myself, I also applied for and was interviewed for training contracts in London as well as Birmingham. But I ultimately chose to stay in Birmingham for many different reasons. The first is the variety of seat options available in Birmingham as a trainee across personal and business legal services. They range from medical negligence, court of protection, public law, personal injury, commercial disputes, restructuring and insolvency, family law, private client and employment law. And that was a big factor for me because I wanted to get as much experience as possible as a trainee across as many areas as possible. In Birmingham, we have the opportunity to work with colleagues across various offices, but then that's also balanced with a strong sense of community in the Birmingham office. You can't go into our social space or sort of walk around the office without bumping into someone you know, which is great as a trainee because you feel like, you feel like you're part of something bigger. Our lawyers and teams in Birmingham are consistently named and ranked in the Legal 500 as well as other legal directories, which means that as a trainee, you'll work with and learn from some of the leading solicitors in their respective fields, and you get to work on high-profile cases. Sometimes when I watch, the local news, I see a solicitor that I know from the office on the news talking about their clients. So it really is high profile cases that attract media attention. And also in Birmingham, there's a thriving sort of legal community. There's loads of different groups that you can get involved in, such as the Birmingham Law Society, Birmingham Trainee Solicitor Society, the Birmingham Solicitor Group, and other sort of business networking groups. which will provide you opportunities as a trainee to develop your network by attending professional events. There's always something going on in Birmingham. And there's loads of different events every month, so there's loads of opportunities to get stuck in. Personally, I was the firm's rep for Birmingham Trainee Solicitor Society this year, and I've also had the opportunity to present to the Birmingham Law Society on the topic of AI after attending an event. So there really is lots of opportunities if you want to network and get involved with all things legal in Birmingham. Working in and training in Birmingham and in the office is great. You do feel like a valued member of all the teams that you join. You're given lots of responsibility, which then helps you when you become a newly qualified solicitor. And there's also a strong emphasis on your development. There's loads of opportunities to collaborate with other teams in the office. We do loads of office events that are held throughout the year, and it's a really collaborative environment for a trainee. And we thoroughly recommend that that you apply to come and join us. By way of a quick background to my journey so far, I before joining Owen Mitchell, I completed my law undergraduate degree at Aston University in Birmingham with a placement year. So that's why I took a year out. I worked in after sales for the third year of my degree, which allowed me to develop my soft skills such as communication and time management, which I still utilise to this day. I then completed my LPC at the University of Law in Birmingham. And then I worked in the legal sort of industry in Birmingham for the last 4 years as a paralegal at a different law firm before joining Owen Mitchell as a trainee in 2023 and then qualifying earlier this year. That's just a very quick whistle-stop tour of my journey so far. So I hope you find that helpful. If you do have any questions at all, please let me know either on LinkedIn or if you email Early Careers, then they can pass it on to me. If you've got any questions at all about Birmingham or newly qualified life in Birmingham, training in Birmingham, please let me know. I'll be more than happy to help where I can. I think I'm passing back to Amy.
Brilliant. Thank you, Amy. And just to give you a sense of what we are actually recruiting for in Birmingham this year. So we do actually have one vacancy for 2026, and that is in our legal services for individual stream. And then we are open for 27 for both streams, LSI and LSB. And sorry, I should say for 2028, we have options for legal services for individuals, but for legal services for businesses, we're just finalising what our demand looks like for those areas. So if you are interested in a training contract in the business side of the firm, those roles will be advertised around the same time next year, but you can, as I say, get on our website and there's lots more information on there. So I'm going to pass over to Martha now, who's going to cover off Brighton.
Hi everyone, really nice to have you with us today. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to join us. So I'm going to be talking a bit about our Brighton office, which is actually very exciting because in last year's application round, we weren't really advertising it and it's only 2 years old and it's been going from strength to strength. So very exciting that you have the opportunity to apply for a TC, including Brighton. So before I talk a bit more about the office itself, I thought I'd give you a bit of background in terms of my journey to qualifying into our commercial team and working from our Brighton office. So I'm from Lincolnshire and I went to Durham University to study languages, including a year abroad. I then secured my training contract at the end of my degree and did the GDL and LPC. And whilst doing those courses, I managed to get a paralegal job with Owen Mitchell in our commercial team in Gatwick at the time. And then started my training contract a few years ago now in our Gatwick office, and I did seats across various teams, including employment, planning and commercial. I then decided to repeat my commercial seats and I qualified into commercial in August last year. Now, moving on a little bit more onto the Brighton office specifically. So as I said, my training contract was actually in Gatwick, but the Brighton office opened towards the end of my training contract. And because I live in Brighton and Hove, I started working regularly from the office alongside a lot of other colleagues who live locally in the area. A lot of people who work out of Gatwick and Chichester, and some out of London, live in Brighton. So it's not just a hub that people are based in, it's also a hub that a lot of people use when they're not working from another office. And since it's been open for just under 2 years, it's really grown from strength to strength, and a number of people have now been hired into Brighton, and there's a lot of teams that work out of here. In terms of legal services for individuals, we have colleagues in family and across private client advisory. And in terms of legal services for business, we have almost all teams have somebody that comes here semi-regularly, but we definitely have corporate restructuring and insolvency, construction, planning, real estate, and commercial dispute resolution. But as I say, we actually have colleagues across more teams than this who regularly visit the office, whether that's because they have a client meeting in Brighton, or because they live locally, or because they're just visiting for some reason. So if you did work out of our Brighton office, you get an opportunity to connect with colleagues across all different teams, and it's very sociable. So in terms of why Brighton might be something you'd want to consider, firstly, Brighton is an amazing city to live in, on the coast. I moved here during my LPC and haven't looked back. I'm not sure I will move, and if anybody who's on the call does live here, I presume you'll agree with that as well. It's just a great place. As I mentioned, the office is really sociable. Because it's quite small and it's expanded over the last 2 years, but sort of organically expanded. Everyone knows each other really well. It's not sort of you have one team sitting over here and one team sitting over there. It's very much everyone knows each other, everyone speaks, everyone gets on. And that's not only sort of beneficial socially, you get to know a lot of people, but also beneficial work-wise. You receive work from people in lots of different teams. You can ask people in different teams for advice on something if it's something that's more their specialism. So it's a really great community of colleagues. Just sort of to illustrate how sort of close-knit it is, we had our latest office social a couple of weeks ago, and pretty much every single person who is tied to the Brighton office or works here regularly attended. So it's a very nice office to be a part of. And then just sort of addressing sort of the Brighton or regional offices versus London. I considered applying to training contracts in London, but in terms of my application to IM, I wanted to apply regionally, partly because I knew how competitive it was to apply for London, but also because I didn't actually want to live there. And I think once you realise how many opportunities there are outside of London, then, if that's something that you would prefer, then I think it's great. And Owen Mitchell has offices in so many different places that hopefully there's somewhere that, works for you. Obviously, as Amy said, you should choose the office based on where you actually want to work. But I would really recommend it. My experience in both Gatwick and Brighton has been great. And I think I'm handing back to Amy to cover the roles available in Brighton.
Well, Martha, but before you go, I've just noticed in the Q&A, it's a question about Birmingham, but I'm conscious that the other Amy has left us. But just in terms of the differences of work that you'd find outside of London, would you say, in your opinion, that there's any difference in terms of the work that you would get involved in terms of the different teams that you work in? As I say, from what I hear, it sounds as though there's quite high quality work in whatever office you work in, but I don't know if you've got a view on that at all.
Yeah, so from a commercial perspective, we work quite nationally. And I've worked with London fee earners, I work with fee earners out in various offices across the country, and I wouldn't say there's a difference really in the caliber. Maybe in certain teams there's more of a distinction in the type of work that the London team might do versus other teams, but certainly in commercial I wouldn't say that the caliber of work is any less. And actually I think a lot of the teams, it is different team by team, but a lot of the teams work quite nationally and collaboratively, so you'll be getting involved in a lot of different work, and yeah, that's what I'd say.
Really helpful. Thanks, Martha. And if whoever asked the question, if you do have any further queries about Birmingham specifically, if you just want to drop us an email, we can pick that up with you. But just before we move on then, so in terms of Brighton, I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we're really excited because we are now offering roles from the Brighton office. Again, for 2026, we do have some roles there as well. So one in the legal services for individual stream, and that would cover off work in family, but you'd also be working with other teams in other offices around Gatwick as well within that. And then for 2027, we are open for applications for both streams. And then for 2028, like Birmingham, we are just reviewing where we are in terms of business services, but keep an eye out in terms of when they're advertised. Okay, so we've talked about Brighton, so let's move on to Bristol, and I'm going to hand over to Hannah.
Thanks, Amy. Hi everyone, I'm Hannah. I'm a newly qualified solicitor in the Court of Protection team here in Bristol. Just a little bit about kind of me and my journey here. So I actually am from and still live in a small town in Wiltshire. So I actually commute to the Bristol office every time I come in. And neither of my parents went to university, so I was the first person in my family to go. And I went off to Exeter University to study law. I did my law degree. I got my training contract offer, I think, in my second year of uni. And then I did my LPC at the time, obviously now SQE, at the University of Law in Bristol, and I commuted from Wiltshire to do my LPC at the time as well. So that's kind of how I got to my training contract, and I suppose that led to the reason that I applied to Bristol for my training contract was because it's a commutable distance from where I live, and I wanted to stay living where I am in Wiltshire. And so I decided to apply to Bristol as my most local office, whilst still being a big enough city where there are plenty of opportunities to get a training contract, but also to feel like I was able to progress at a national law firm. So that's kind of why I applied to the Bristol office. In terms of the teams in the Bristol office, it's one of our on the smaller side. It's not a tiny office, but it's one of our smaller offices. And we only offer legal services for individuals at the moment in the Bristol office. So there's teams for medical negligence, serious injury and asbestos and occupational diseases, court of protection, public law and human rights, and wills, trust and estates disputes. But all those teams are, big established teams in the area, with some really, really reputable fee earners. So it certainly packs a punch, even though it's one of the smaller offices. And for example, in the Court of Protection team, we're huge in Bristol, and we cover Bristol, Southampton, and Cardiff. So you get lots and lots of opportunity in the Bristol office to experience really, really great legal work. And if you're interested in legal services for individuals, then the Bristol office is a great place to be. Throughout my training contract, I've had loads of experience. I did serious injury as a seat. I've done court of protection. I've done family, ultimately qualifying back into court of protection. But yeah, loads of opportunity to get really, really good legal work experience in Bristol. And like Amy said a bit earlier, that it's a really good legal environment in the city as well. There's lots of very big law firms here, so you really get to know other legal professionals in the area. We've got the junior lawyers division, we've got the young professionals groups in Bristol. There's the Bristol Legal Walk. There's so much going on that you can get a chance to get involved in, both as a trainee and once you're qualified as well. So it's a really great place to be, and Bristol is a lovely city. There's loads of culture, loads of things going on all the time, loads of great food options, which is one of the strong plus points for me. So it's a really great place to kind of train and have your career going forwards. So that's kind of a bit about Bristol, really. In terms of, I suppose, the Bristol office itself and the community, whilst we're one of the smaller offices, we do still have a lot of fee earners based out of the Bristol office. And we also have strong connections with Cardiff, which, as Amy mentioned earlier, is quite an up-and-coming office. And it's great to hear we're now offering positions in Cardiff as well. But there's lots of opportunities to get involved with things in the Cardiff office. If you perhaps live a bit closer to Cardiff, we do lots of events in collaboration with Cardiff. And there's lots of organisations that kind of branch across Cardiff and Bristol. So you do really get an opportunity to work with people in different cities, similarly with the South Coast as well, which is really great. And then kind of the office environment, again, like Martha said as well, it's a really close-knit team in Bristol. You kind of know everyone from every team. Everyone's really friendly. There's no feeling that you can't speak to somebody more senior. You know, you can just have a chat with anybody from any team, which is really great as a trainee to get to understand the different teams and ones you might want to perhaps gain some experience in, and it's great once you're qualified for things like cross referrals, speaking to a team if you've got a question. I'm very often speaking to the family team or the public law team with various queries that I might have, being in the court of protection team. So it's a really, really close-knit office and kind of a lovely environment to work in. And I try and come in as much as I can, to be honest, to be surrounded by that kind of environment. We also have our charity committee, social committee, and everything that you can get stuck in with straight away, and lots of opportunity to make suggestions, put events on, etc. Kind of, you can have that from the get-go, really. So yeah, it's a great office. So yeah, loads of reasons to kind of consider Bristol. In terms of whether I considered London, I didn't consider London, I think, because of my situation and the fact that I wanted to remain a commutable distance from where I am. And like some of the others have said as well, I think it being competitive did put me off a bit, and I really didn't want to live in London. So felt that I'd be better placed applying for a more regional office. And I've never felt like I'm at a disadvantage or have less good quality work by being outside of London. I think the Bristol legal market is really, really strong and going from strength to strength, and it's growing a lot. So I think it's a great thing to be a part of, to have opportunities to progress, and to really experience some really, really interesting work. So yeah, I've never kind of regretted not considering London, but I myself didn't consider it at all. So yeah, I think that's kind of a bit about me and a bit about why I chose Bristol and why it's kind of a great place to work. So I think I'm handing back to Amy.
Brilliant. Yes, thank you, Hannah. And yeah, we're really excited too that we're officially opening in Bristol. So we've got roles for 2027. As Hannah mentioned there, it is just solely on that legal services for individual streams, but you can now apply for both 2027 and 2028. So we've talked about Bristol. Let's move on to Cambridge, and I'm going to hand over to Eleanor.
Hi everyone, my name's Ellie. I'm a first year trainee in serious injury in Cambridge. Thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to be talking about the Cambridge office. But before I do that, I'll just quickly give some information about me and my journey into law. So I'm from a place called Bedfordshire, which is about an hour outside of London and Cambridge. I went to the University of York and studied English, and when I graduated, I worked for a few years in the charity sector. Then I came to work at Owen Mitchell as a paralegal, so I was in the public law and human rights team in London for about 3 years. I studied for the PGDL part-time while I was working as a paralegal, and now I'm a trainee, I'm studying for the SQE. So to talk a little bit about the Cambridge office, as far as I'm aware, and I'm sure Amy will correct me on this, there aren't any legal services for business seats in the Cambridge office. We are a legal services for individuals office, similar to what Hannah was just saying about Bristol. So the teams we have here are serious injury, medical negligence, court of protection, public law and human rights, and asbestos and occupational diseases. So my reasons for choosing the Cambridge office, number one, I would say I really like the seats that were on offer here. There's a good range of contentious and non-contentious work across different areas. And although the seats, there isn't a huge range on offer, I saw that as a plus compared to London, because there is such a range of seats on offer there. I thought I may have been placed somewhere that I maybe was less interested in, whereas in Cambridge, I knew I was definitely keen on all of the areas. As everyone else has been saying, the quality of work is really high and it's interesting. You are working with really well-regarded lawyers. I'm working with a partner who's ranked in the Legal 500. And the Cambridge office in particular has a really good reputation for personal injury work. And as a trainee, there are really good opportunities for work and otherwise. So last week, I got to attend a criminal trial, even though I'm in a serious injury seat, which was really interesting. I've never done that before. And thirdly, as a paralegal, when I was in London, I had worked with people in the Cambridge office in the public law team. So I did know some people here and I knew that it was a really nice office, which made it less daunting to apply. And then finally, Cambridge is a nice place to live. That was a draw for me. And having moved here, I've never lived here before. It is really nice. I can vouch for that. So that's another plus. In terms of whether I considered applying to London, I did. I did consider it because obviously I was a public law paralegal in the London team and I had worked there for a few years, but I am really glad I chose Cambridge. Having worked in both Cambridge and London, I can say that the quality of work is the same. I think it's a bit of a myth that if you work regionally, the quality of work is different. That's not been the case for me at all. My supervisor goes out of the way to make sure I'm given really challenging and interesting tasks, and I've really enjoyed the work so far. Also in the Cambridge office, there is a really good social side. So we have a netball team that's just been sorted out. There is the Cambridge Junior Lawyers Division, which is separate from Irwin Mitchell. So you get to meet lawyers from all different fields and different firms, and you get to network with them. So last week we went on a ghost tour of Cambridge, which was really fun. And finally, the office is really good here. There's really good facilities. So there's a free gym, free snacks, free teas and coffees. So I'm really glad that I came here and I'm really happy in Cambridge. So would definitely recommend applying here. And I think Amy will now run through the seats on offer.
I will. Thank you, Ellie. And yes, you're right. So Cambridge is a location where we just focus on that legal services for individual streams. In terms of opportunities, we have now filled all our roles for 26. However, we are now open for 27 and 28. And as I say, it's in that LSI roles. So let's move on to Chichester, and I'm going to hand over to Laura.
Hi everyone. So I'm Lara and I'm about a year qualified now. So I did my training contract in Chichester. A little bit about me. So I actually used to live in London. I worked in London for a number of years in a completely different career. So I worked in marketing after I graduated. And I'd left London because I felt like I'd sort of been there for a while and I was really ready for a change. And I moved out of London to near basically where I grew up, which is very near to our Chichester office. And then I decided to sort of reroute my career as well. So I then did the GDL. I think it was during COVID, and then I did the LPC, and then I started my training contract in Chichester. So yeah, for me it was a bit of a life change. It was about lifestyle. I didn't really want to be based in like the middle of a big city, but equally I didn't want my career to be compromised because of that. So I guess in terms of how I was thinking about my training contract applications, so my strategy was really to research the firms that I would be interested in working for rather than just looking at where I was in London, because I do actually live a really commutable distance to London, but I didn't necessarily want to be doing that commute every single day, but I equally wanted to have like a training contract at a really reputable firm, and be sort of having the opportunities to sort of experience a variety of seats in the areas of law that I would be really interested in. And so, yeah, I applied to the Chichester office and was lucky enough to get it. And then my training contract, so I did a variety of seats, and I did sort of litigation and obviously non-litigation seats, which is great. I've now qualified into the Wills Trust and Estates Disputes team, which it was really interesting. I think a lot of people say you either know if you want to be a litigator or not, and I think from quite early on that was where I was headed. So yeah, I qualified into the Wills Trust and Estates Dispute team back in like August last year, and it's been great. So I guess a bit about the Chichester office and the work that the team in the Chichester office do. So it's a bigger office than you might think for a smaller city, and it's a really well established office that has been there for a long time. And a lot of the lawyers that are based out of the Chichester office they're really highly regarded in their fields. And they've sort of been based out of Chichester for a long time. That's sort of where they've had their careers. So that's a really big plus point, I think, because the quality of work is really great, because a lot of the lawyers will attract work to them. And so whether that's sort of really local, there's a lot of work that is local, but there's also work sort of nationally. And in my team, certainly we have, a lot of the cases that I work on would either be heard in London or somewhere in the south, but not necessarily, because it sort of depends on the case and things like that. So in Chichester, we also do sort of mainly legal services for individuals. So we have the Wills Trust and Estates Disputes team that I sit within. We've also got a private client advisory team, and then we've also got the family team. We've got a specialist tax and trusts advisory team as well. And so for me, that's another real plus point of being based in Chichester, is so where I deal with Wills Trust and Estates Disputes, there's so many people within the other teams that you collaborate with, and you can get second opinions on things, you can get special advice on a tax point really, really easily, and that's been a really it's been a real benefit, especially at the beginning of my career as a solicitor. So that's great. We also do actually have a commercial property team that sits in the Chichester office, who are great as well, and if you've got any property questions or things like that, it's helpful. And so it's a really well established office, and everyone's really friendly. It's sort of it's a really relaxed atmosphere. Most people know each other, and a lot of people, like I said, because a lot of people have been there for a long time, it does have a real kind of collegiate feel to it. So yeah, I guess in terms of, I think I've already sort of covered this, but whether I was thinking about applying to any London firms, I did consider it, because I'm in a position where I could either be sort of commuting up into London or down towards the Chichester office. And I think for me, it was about the lifestyle. It was about whether I really wanted to be on a train every single day in the city. But as I said, I think I didn't want to kind of compromise on my career. But for me, it was also like I felt like not having to do that commute, which is it's quite full on, and being somewhere much more local to where I live, I could really focus on my career and have a bit more time sort of spent, and energy really. So that was kind of why I focused on the Chichester office, staying more local. Obviously that gives you a better work-life balance, which is always a bonus. And I feel like as well, there's been, in terms of like business development, networking, the legal, I guess, scene in the southeast, there's a lot of opportunities to network, not just within the sort of city that we're in Chichester, but a kind of across the board. I've been to events in Southampton, I've been to sometimes events in London, actually. It just sort of depends on what comes up. And then there are lots of local events in Chichester where you can get quite involved in sort of the South Hampshire Junior Lawyers Network. There's a Chichester Junior Lawyer Network as well now, which is great. And then there's also more kind of broad networking groups. So there's a lunch that I go to, which is just sort of local professionals, and that's really been really nice. And actually you do get quite a few referrals just from speaking to people at those sorts of events that aren't necessarily law focused, but they're just from people within the local area. And you're sort of really encouraged to get out there and make a profile for yourself, which I think is, in a smaller place, I think maybe that's a little bit more achievable earlier on, you can kind of build your network really well. And yeah, I think that was sort of everything that I was going to cover, but if anyone's got any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Brilliant. Thanks, Laura. Yeah, just to cover off the numbers again. So for Chichester, we are looking for trainees in this next year, 2026, 27 and 28. Again, this is an office where we are focusing on legal service for individuals. So it'd be a mixture of private client advisory, wills, trusts and estates disputes and family. And also just to plug our Reading office as well. So we do have some vacancies for 2026, again, in that legal services for individual stream. So that was Chichester and Reading. So I'm going to pass over to Henry to talk about Leeds.
Hi everyone. I'm Henry. I'm an associate solicitor in Irwin Mitchell's corporate team, and as Amy said, I'm based in the Leeds office. To start off about me, I'm originally from Preston, but I then went to uni in Leeds where I did a classical civilization degree. And for the most part, I've stayed in Leeds since then, but I did do a year in Manchester with the first year of my law conversion on the GDL. Ultimately, I joined Irwin Mitchell as a trainee in 2019. I was on the business stream, and so I did seats in real estate, insolvency, corporate and commercial litigation. As is normal, I enjoyed them to varying degrees. The one that I really enjoyed was corporate, and so I was very pleased to be able to qualify into that team as a solicitor. In corporate, we do a mix of mergers and acquisitions and investments on the transactional side. We do reorganisations and some board advisory work. We act for businesses, companies and partnerships, directors, shareholders and some investors. So then to move on to talk about the Leeds office, it's got a lot to offer across both streams. This is an office where we do both personal and business. On the business side, we do banking, corporate, commercial, real estate, litigation, employment, pensions, and restructuring and insolvency. The personal stream, there is serious injury, medical negligence, court of protection, asbestos and occupational disease, family, wills, trusts and estates disputes, and private client advisory. So then how did I end up in Leeds? Why Leeds? At an early stage, I decided that I wanted to be regional. So I decided that London wasn't for me quite early on. I never really considered it. Personally, I find London just a little bit too big. From that point, Leeds or Manchester were the two obvious fits for me, being from the north. Ultimately, I ended up in Leeds actually for personal reasons in the main, which is that my partner is from Leeds, and so we settled over here. I really do like Leeds, though. I think it's a good sized city, but I can still get out to the countryside quite quickly, which is what I enjoy doing. You also still get really good quality work. For me, on the sort of business side in particular, that's frequently got an international element. It's a growing city. It's developing economically really quickly. It's also really good culturally. There's lots to do. With sport, music, the arts, nightlife, all that sort of stuff. I think it's a really good city to be in and to start your career on. As a young professional, like a number of the other offices, there's plenty of networks and groups you can join. So there is the Leeds Joint Junior Lawyers Division. I actually in particular did the Leeds Young Professionals, quite a few events with them where I got to be able to build my network really well. And meet lots of other young professionals who were trying to do the same thing. In terms of why Irwin Mitchell, in Leeds, why Leeds for Irwin Mitchell? Well, we've got lots of choice when it comes to seats. I think we're as competitive as any other office in that regard across both work streams. I don't think we have absolutely everything, but I think we've got pretty close to it. It's a good quality of work, as I've already just mentioned, and we also have one of the newer offices. We moved into our office, I think, about 18 months ago. It's in Wellington Place. There is a picture of it on the screen at the moment. So it's well located. Wellington Place has become a real go-to spot for professional service firms in Leeds. There's lots of us around. There's also lots of cafes, shops, gyms, plenty going on. It's also not that far from the train station. It's in walking distance of the main city centre. So we're well located with good quality seats, good quality work, and lots to do. And so that's why I would recommend coming to Leeds and considering applying to the Leeds office at Irwin Mitchell. I think I'm going to hand back to Amy now.
Yes, thanks, Henry. And as somebody who is in the Leeds office, I can definitely echo everything Henry said, and also add in there's a great coffee machine as well, which I'm there on a regular basis. And in terms of the roles that we cover off in Leeds, so as Henry mentioned, we've got both streams there, lots of variety. We've actually filled all our roles for 2026, but we are now open for 27 for LSI and LSB, and then for LSI 2028 for the business side. Again, we are just looking at demand at the moment, but those roles will be advertised this time next year. Okay, so we've done these. So let's move on to Newcastle and handing over to Alicia. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi everyone, my name's Alicia and I am a corporate protection solicitor based in our Newcastle offices, which is another of the offices which works within the legal services for individuals stream. That's the kind of only options that we have here. I did my training contract here at Irwin Mitchell in our Newcastle office. I qualified after a fantastic training contract in August of 2023. I'm in my third year now post-qualification, so it feels like a long time ago. As I'm sure you might be able to tell, I'm originally from Northern Ireland, but I moved to Newcastle for university, where I did a law degree with European Legal Studies at Newcastle University. I got my training contract offer in my final year of uni. Throughout and following university, I worked for Tesco, actually, and I think it's important to note that my interpersonal skills were really benefited from that experience, and it's not necessary, although helpful, of course, to have detailed legal experience such as a paralegal role or anything like that. Any experience is good experience if you can use it properly. From the very start of my legal career, I kind of knew that I wanted to remain in the regions. Whilst the London office is fantastic and offers really incredible opportunities, I wanted somewhere that felt that little bit smaller, a little bit more community driven. And in addition, fantastic career opportunities in the legal market are not limited to London. Again, I can echo that that's a little bit of a myth. When I considered applying for training contracts, I actually applied for both Newcastle and Birmingham. And actually I was ultimately successful in the Birmingham office and even began progressing towards that by completing my LPC at the University of Law in Birmingham. However, due to some personal family circumstances, I asked with my tail between my legs if it would be possible with business need to move me up to Newcastle, and thanks to some really amazing support from our early careers team and some investigative work as to if it was even a possible move, the business was able to accommodate that, and I was then absolutely delighted to start my training contract here in Newcastle. But it does mean that I can vouch that Birmingham was a fantastic office as well, as Amy explained at the beginning of the meeting. I knew that Irwin Mitchell's reputation in Newcastle was brilliant from my time at university there. So when I got the chance to join, it was kind of a no-brainer. My training contract itself, I had some had seats in serious injury, court of protection, and asbestos and occupational disease before finally qualifying back into court of protection. The Newcastle office is one of the smaller offices in the firm, but it's growing. We have 7 teams: serious injury, medical negligence, public law and human rights, court of protection, asbestos and occupational disease, and private client advisory. And more recently, we do have a family law contingent after Irwin Mitchell joined up with Silk Family Law, who were and are highly regarded specialists in the family law area. So we're really pleased to have those. here in the Newcastle office, we, like I say, cover mostly legal services for individuals, and we cover almost every aspect of what our personal clients might need. However, we do have a strong connection with the other offices nationwide to ensure that we can also meet business needs for clients where those overlap. Notably, I think for Newcastle, it's important to note that we also have a really close connection to our clients, colleagues and contacts in Scotland, as we're the most kind of northerly office in England and Wales. All this just adds together to give us some really good quality work, and I can really say that the quality of work here is exceptional. In part due to the fantastically experienced lawyers here, but also due to our really strong links with local hospitals, charities and public bodies, which we have work referrers from and really trust us in the local area. Newcastle itself is a really fantastic place to work. It's a vibrant city, it's a football city. We can see St James's Park just from outside these windows. There's also great social life outside of work, and it was that kind of sense of community that really appealed to me. It's much more close-knit than some other jobs I have had in the past, and that's made a huge difference to my work-life balance. We're also in Newcastle, a stone's throw away from the seaside, some beautiful landscapes in Northumberland, as well as having a brilliant nightlife and loads of culture in the middle of the city. We kind of have the best of both worlds, and it's a fantastic place to live and also to work. As some of the other colleagues in the other offices have said, Newcastle isn't lacking a legal community either. We also have all the networks, both internally at Irwin Mitchell and externally, for young professionals to help you network and make friends or continue to foster relationships. So yes, for anyone considering a regional office, Newcastle is a really, really great choice. If you did have any other questions, of course, you can pass them after the meeting, but feel free to look me up on LinkedIn, where I am Alicia G, I think, but hopefully you'll recognise my face. And I'll pass back to Amy to explain if there's seats here in Newcastle.
Thanks, Alicia. Yeah, so just on the numbers, so as we've pointed out there, so it is an office where we have got those seats in legal services for individuals. We do have a role in 2026, also for 2027 and also for 2028. So we are open for all years in that office. So let's now move on to Sheffield and Manchester, and I'm going to hand over to Katie.
Hello everyone, my name is Katie. I'm a solicitor in the restructuring and insolvency team, and I'm based in Sheffield. So I'll start by giving you a bit of background about me. So I studied law and criminology at the University of Sheffield. Anyone on the call that studied there, they always tell you during your induction that a lot of people that attend Sheffield University stay in the city, and I'm an example of that. So I did think about applying to London, and I did a couple of inside days at firms in London, which I did enjoy. However, when I did a longer placement, it wasn't for me. The accommodation was small, and the tubes are very busy, so I knew that wasn't for me. Then I started looking into where I could work regionally, and Sheffield just seemed to be where I was happy living for so many years anyway. And the quality of work is essentially, from what I've seen, exactly the same as the London teams. We work nationally in the teams which I trained in, which is great. And my current role as a solicitor now, I do go down to London for events and mediations, hearings. So that is really good for someone that does like a little bit of London, just not too much. In terms of what Sheffield has to offer as a city, it's a very sociable city. The legal community is, of course, smaller than that in London, but that's a nice thing, because when you do go to your networking events, you probably learn faces and names really quickly, and there's a stronger sense of community as a result of that. Lots of lovely places to eat, drink. Again, I think people have mentioned big football city, big music city, which is great. In terms of the seats that you could do in Sheffield and Manchester, so Sheffield, you've got real estate disputes, real estate restructuring and insolvency, employment, and RCG. And in terms of the stream for individuals, it's serious injury, medical negligence, court of protection, public law and human rights, asbestos and occupational disease, family, wills, trusts and estate disputes, and private client advisory. And Manchester has got a very similar breadth of seats. So for individuals, you've got asbestos and occupational disease, serious injury, medical negligence, court of protection, public law and human rights, private client advisory, family and wills, trusts and estate disputes. And for business, you've got corporate, construction, employment, litigation, planning, real estate and real estate disputes. So there's a real big range there on both sides. And I do believe a lot of those teams work nationally. So if you are someone that likes one city but with a bit of something else, it may well be a good office to apply for. So that's it in a nutshell. If anyone does have any questions, do feel free to pop me a message on LinkedIn or get in touch with Early Careers and I'll happily answer. And I will hand back over to Amy.
Thank you very much. So yeah, just to give a little bit more information on the numbers. So both Sheffield and Manchester, two of our larger offices where we have really healthy trainee cohort numbers. So in terms of Sheffield for 2026, we are all filled up. 2027, we've got LSI and LSB. And 2028, again, LSI, but LSB, that will be advertised this time next year. In terms of Manchester, we do have a role for 2026, and that is in our legal services for individual streams. 27, we've got both, and then 28, again, so we've got LSI open and LSB will be next year. So our last office, last but not least, I'm going to hand over to Rachel to take us through Southampton.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Rachel Gregg and I'm a medical negligence solicitor in our Southampton office. I was born and I grew up in a town called Cheltenham, and I moved to Southampton to complete my law degree at the University of Southampton. After I completed my law degree in 2020, I got offered a role as a paralegal in the asbestos and occupational disease team in the Southampton office, and that was around the November time. And I then worked with this team in the Southampton office right through to when I started my training contract in 2023. During my training contract, I completed seats in asbestos and occupational disease, medical negligence and court of protection. And I ultimately decided that I wanted to qualify into the medical negligence team, and was lucky enough to be offered early qualification as there was a business need for a newly qualified solicitor slightly earlier than expected. So I qualified in March 2025, and I'm currently living in a town called Aldershot, and I commute into Southampton to work with my team. So that just gives you a little bit of about my background in law. In terms of the Southampton office, it is primarily teams for legal services for individuals in the Southampton office. So we have a very well-growing medical negligence team, a serious injury team, a court of protection team, asbestos and occupational diseases team, and a public law and human rights team. There are a whole number of reasons why I decided that I wanted to work in Southampton. I was lucky enough to experience the office and the teams within the office as a paralegal, and I really felt that the office had a friendly feel. It is one of our smaller offices, so you do really get to know everyone within the office, and there is a real community feel. Despite being in the Southampton office and, echoing what a lot of my colleagues have said, the fact that we are outside of London does not impact the quality of work that you receive at all. So at the moment, I am assisting on some pretty high value medical negligence claims that require thorough investigation and quantification. And working outside of London hasn't really affected that and absolutely does not limit the quality of work that you receive, nor the experiences that you gain as a trainee solicitor and as an NQ solicitor. We have some great opportunities in the Southampton office to socialise with your colleagues. There are events put on regularly, and there's also some great places to go out for some team lunches. Whilst I don't live in Southampton now, I did live in Southampton during my undergraduate degree, and the city does have a very good social scene. It has a whole host of events that go on. There's theatre shows at the Mayflower Theatre, great selection of restaurants and bars, and it is actually the departure point for a lot of cruises. So if you ever fancied a little holiday, Southampton is a great place to be based. The city also does have quite a lot of history, which makes it a really interesting place to both live and work. In terms of whether I considered London as the place for my career, I did actually, and was lucky enough to experience working in London for 6 months of my training contract due to business need. So I was seconded over to the London office for one of my seats. And I did consider working in London for a while, but ultimately I decided that the commute in, particularly on public transport and the difficulties that come with that, was really not for me. Whilst the team were absolutely fantastic and I worked with some great lawyers, the train journey and getting on the bus or the tube was just a bit too much for me in the morning and after work. So yeah, I think Southampton worked out to be the better option for me. And there was also the element of wanting to ensure that the place that I was working would fit in with my personal goals in the future, such as having a family and things like that. So yeah, if anyone has any questions about Southampton or working in medical negligence or anything else, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. And yeah, I'll hand back over to Amy now.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rachel. So yeah, just in terms of numbers we're recruiting for, so Southampton is an office again where we focus on that legal services for individual stream. We are now filled for 2026, although we do have opportunities for 2027. So if you are interested, please do submit your application. So moving on now to the final slide. So hopefully listening to our wonderful team of fee earners there, you've got some real strong reasons for why you'd like to consider one of our regional offices outside of London. And thank you to our wonderful team of speakers there for taking us through each of their offices. So just to sum up really, so if you came into the session with a few concerns around maybe working in a regional office, I hope we've helped to address them today. And I just wanted to recap on a few of the key points that have come through, both in the presentation, but also from the questions that have been submitted. So lots of questions about quality of work, and hopefully we've demonstrated to you today that you can absolutely get high quality work outside of London, and that our regional teams are involved in really complex, high profile matters, and that is across the firm, and our trainees do get very much involved in that. In terms of salary, yes, let's be honest that there is a difference there, but it is important to remember that this does reflect the cost of living, which is typically much lower outside of London. In terms of social life, so lots of our speakers today have spoken around what happens both in the office but also what is around that local area. So, you know, wherever you choose to apply to, there is a vibrant social scene, and that a lot of those regional offices, you live a lot closer to the office, which hopefully means a little bit of cheaper rent, a shorter commute, and yeah, shorter taxi journeys. In terms of team structure and support, yes, whilst in London we may have a few larger teams, lots of other offices in the smaller offices, and lots of examples of where people work really closely with their partners, and you've got that one support and a real strong sense of a team. In terms of building your network, so whether you're in London or in a regional office, there's plenty of opportunities, as you've heard today, to build both that internal and external network. So you should feel supported wherever you choose to apply. And then that making a name for yourself. So many of our lawyers outside of London have achieved that coveted tier 1 ranking and have been recognised as rising stars and ones to watch. So your location really doesn't limit your potential. And just to sort of plug our other offices, whilst today we have focused on the offices that we've gone through, I also just wanted to highlight again that we are now recruiting for trainees in the LSI stream, so that's for individuals in Cardiff, Liverpool and Nottingham. Okay, So I think we're just moving on now to any further questions. But just to say again, so we are open for applications now. We're open to the 1st of December, so lots of time to go and do your research, have a look at this webinar. It will be going out on our social media channels, so you can catch up on it there if you need to. I'm just looking in terms of the Q&A. I think we've actually covered everything in there, so I don't think I've got any more to say on that. And I've had a look at our pre-submitted questions, and we've actually covered everything in there. So we are going to bring it to a close a little bit earlier, unless anybody has a last-minute question in the Q&A, which I can't see any coming through. So what I'll do then is I will close the session. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope, as I said earlier, that it's given you lots to think about in terms of all our offices, the quality of work you will get wherever you are, and also an idea of the support and, a real talk you through in terms of what you can do in terms of building your career outside of London. So thank you for joining us, and thank you to our speakers, and I'll end the webinar. Thanks, everybody.